What will you do to unlock innovation? In today's fast-paced world, innovation might not be enough. Tomorrow's pioneers of change will need to be agile, able to adapt, and committed like never before. Your host, Sana Vinding, invites you to listen in and join business leaders from around the world as they share their visions for success in our future business challenges.
Welcome to Mind Innovation. I'm your host, Sana Vinding, and I'm always excited to learn. And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about leadership development. Today, I have Heather Polivka. She's the CEO of HeatherP Solutions, with focus on driving business performance through employee performance. Before launching HeatherP Solutions, Heather led the first global marketing division at United Health Group, a Fortune 6 organization. So Heather, welcome today. I've been looking forward so much to our chat today. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it too. And so I'm excited.
Awesome. So let's learn a little bit more about you, so what's your passion around leadership development? And also let's touch, what's the meaning around leadership development?
Yeah. I love the idea of like, what's your why, right? And my why is that everyone, no one should have to survive work for a paycheck. And everyone deserves to thrive at work.
Yeah.
So that's what drives me. As part of my consulting services, we also, do culture, employee engagement, but all of those efforts. And this is what I saw. You can come up with a strategy, an engagement strategy, and you can have great conversations with the executive team about the culture.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't make it to the front lines, which most often it does not.
Yeah.
Sort of just nice pieces of paper you generated or nice words on a website. And the trick to getting it to the front lines is the managers. And as I worked with managers time and time again, I saw like only 30% of them get any training and support.
Yeah.
We have so many fields like, technology and finance and architecture and engineering where we've prioritized technical skills over people skills.
Yeah.
And those are the industries being hit the worst right now with the great resignation or reshuffling.
Yeah.
Because, what's called for right now are leaders with strong people skills. And so that's really what got me into leadership development and realizing that we have lots of leadership development in the marketplace for the top 20% of the organization. And in fact, 80% of budgets go to the top 20% of the organization.
Wow.
But they don't touch the vast quantity of employees in a company. The first and second line managers do. And so that's really where my heart and where my passion is. Plus, those are the CEOs and the vice presidents and the directors for 10, 15 years from now. So let's give them the building blocks and develop them as people-centric leaders right now.
Yeah. That's really good, right? Because you need to look into the future. What about the different departments? And you have silos, right? You can have operation, you can have finance, and you can have HR and marketing and R&D. How do you get them together so you have a more culture that's bringing them together?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that I see so often is brand work. So companies going to come up with a new brand, and they don't necessarily have the head of operations in those brand meetings. They don't have the head of HR in those brand meetings. And that's a problem because a lot of times when we're developing brands, part of that process is mission and values, which are so instrumental and critical to culture.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those perspectives in the room to say, as we're coming up with, a really great brand, is that authentic?
Yeah.
Can we actually deliver upon that? Is that how we're recognizing and rewarding employees?
Yeah.
Are we leading in that manner? All those questions that HR and operations could authentically answer.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'll start with. That's where the silos start, is not having those perspectives in the room to define that. And then the next step to that is great. So we have values and we have a 1 or 2 sentence, description of them.
Yeah.
The step that most companies miss, is they do not then define the values in terms of behaviors. And so you end up with one leader who says, yeah, I'm living our value of innovation. And they think innovation is like a competitive competition to the death kind of format. And they breed competition on their team.
Yeah.
Versus another leader says, well, innovation, and I'm going to bring in people with other perspectives and ideas, and we're going to collaborate to come up with what that innovation is. Both leaders could say that they are leading the value of innovation, and both would be correct if that company has not defined for them what innovation looks like and sounds like and feels like.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up with teams like, oh, I want to be on that leader's team, but I don't want to be on that leader's team.
Yeah.
Or you have these disconnects between operations and finance and marketing and HR.
Yeah.
Because the behavior work isn't done. So when we think about breaking down silos, it starts at the very sort of, genesis of it with the brand, and then defining values in terms of behaviors. And then leaders starting with holding themselves and their peers accountable to lead inside of those behaviors. And if you start doing that, then it starts to shake it all down and you don't have as big of silos between functions within a company.
Yeah. It sounds easy. It's not easy.
No, I love this. There's a saying, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's this. I mean, it's simple to say, get the leaders in a room and define it in terms of the values. But I will tell you from my consulting work, that is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I find that I really have to say, like, no, we can't proceed with this work unless we have all those perspectives, because I know it won't pay off and be as effective as it could be. And then that's my credibility on the line for making the difference within a company. But it's not easy. And particularly as you maybe change leaders around or you hire new leaders, that's when inconsistency can start to creep in. You always want people who will add to your culture and your values. You don't want to just, prototype. But at the same time, you also need, while everyone can have their own expression of innovation, it still has to either look and feel the same in terms of it's collaborative, or look and feel the same in terms of it's a competitive exercise. Yeah. But then there's always opportunity for nuance within that.
Yeah. What about the fear? Because again, right, if you go in and saying, this is new behavior, or we're going to foster the behavior, so this is the way we're going to have this culture and how we interact with each other. What about the fear in the organization of, because you're shaking it up a little bit. How do you handle that?
It's a great question. It's actually one that I think is, it's always relevant because we're human beings, and fear can be quite the driver of our behavior a lot of times. But I think particularly now, that's what we're seeing with a number of leadership teams, meaning that there's a way that they've generated success. And for the most part, that's how they got to their positions, and that worked up until 2019. Yeah. Now we've shifted the world. The power is lying more with talent than it is with companies. And it's demanding a different kind of leadership. Yeah. And so a lot of people who've generated decades of success leading in a certain way that no longer is as relevant or as effective are needing to change their leadership style. And that is particularly scary when you think wait, I got to this elevated position because I pulled this bar and I pushed that one. And now we're saying, well, try the opposite. Yeah. And there's a lot of resistance. There are companies who are leaping forward and embracing a more people-centric leadership style because they realize that is the way to retain and engage talent. Yeah. And then there's a number of companies, and you'll see, we've seen this, and we're going to see this in this year, who really just ultimately want to turn the clock back to 2019. And that is not going to go well for them. No. Yeah. So, and really, we can't handle other people's fear for them. So it has to be that exercise of reflecting and looking, and it's only as human beings, generally, the cost has to become greater than the fear for our willingness to make change.
Yeah.
And that is what it's going to take for some people when, they see talent walking out the door over and over and over again. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, I'm failing because I can't keep my people,
Yeah.
or I'm failing because I'm forcing them all to do something like return to an office full time because I want to turn the clock back.
Yeah.
Only when they have that moment of realizing like I'm failing because of this will that for some people initiate their willingness to embrace a more people-centric leadership style.
Yeah.
Now, there's also a lot of leaders who are right in the middle. Like maybe they're not leaping forward and they have some fear, but they're like, okay, I'm willing to try this on, but I don't really know how.
Yeah.
And I have a great story of a chief technology officer.
Yeah.
And with my manager development program, Awesome People Leaders, one of the first things that we talk about is brain science. And because we lead humans and humans have brains and our brains drive a lot of our behavior, especially when we're talking about the threat response or that fear.
Yeah.
Versus our productivity zone versus the reward response in our brain, which is where we do collaboration and innovation and problem solving and all those great things. So I shared this module that we have with this chief technology officer. And then afterwards, this was actually with a small group. And afterwards, he came up to me and he said, Heather, I've seen and done a lot of these leadership things. And I have always been like, why do I need to thank people for doing their jobs? They get a paycheck, don't they? He goes, this is actually the first time you explain the science behind it.
Yeah.
Of, as a leader, if I want problem solving and innovation and collaboration to happen, I have to make sure I'm helping people and supporting them to get out of the threat response and the productivity zone and shift them into the zone in their brain where they can do that kind of work. And he goes, so suddenly it makes sense to me that there's science behind it. It's not just like a, squishy, nicey thing to do. It's, squishy, nicey are not the words we generally use to describe technology functions, right? But all of a sudden when there was science behind it, he got it. He's like, oh, my job as a leader is to make sure their brain's over here.
Yeah.
And then they deliver. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the positive feedback, right? That makes the team go in the right direction.
Exactly. In fact, it's recognition, it's positive feedback, and positive feedback in a 4-to-1 ratio of redirecting feedback. And it's funny because I had a leader who's like, Heather, if all I'm doing is focusing on people doing something right to give them positive reinforcing feedback, well, then won't things go to, heck? Yeah. And I said, oh, listen, the way our brains are wired, think about it. If someone says they're going to call you and they're always like count onable to call you and they don't call, does your mind ever go to, hey, maybe they won the lottery? Maybe they won, maybe they caught a plane someplace exotic and fabulous? No, your brain always goes to the worst case scenario, right? I go, so you don't have to worry about it. Your brain is wired to keep you safe. And your brain is always going to catch things that are going to be a risk or going to be failure or going to be a problem. You don't have to worry about that. That's why it's so much better to be intentional with your brain to try to catch people doing something right, to give that positive reinforcing feedback. And trust me, the negative or redirecting will take care of itself.
That's a good. I like your stories here. No, it's really good. It always makes it more real, right? And when you hear, this is actually what happening, or the feedback you're getting. And I think when you have examples, other people can put themselves in that situation and saying, oh, that's how it is. And then it's much better to connect.
Yeah.
But there's still, even though you're saying positive feedback, you still sometimes have to guide the team. And tell them, maybe you're not angry at them, or you're not saying this is not acceptable, but you need to word it right to change the behaviors.
Yeah.
So what kind of development do you recommend here?
Yeah, well, and we do a module on feedback within the Awesome People Leaders, and it's so critical. the thing that's interesting to me is most people don't even know that there's two kinds of feedback. They don't know that there's the positive reinforcing feedback because they're only aware of the negative feedback.
Yeah.
Now, that can be for a couple of reasons. It could be that their leaders didn't know that there was such a thing as positive reinforcing feedback. It can also be how our brains are wired to tune into the negative.
Yeah.
But that's why that 4-to-1 ratio is so important, because when you tell someone, when you did this, it worked really well and it was highly effective. How you prepared for that meeting really had you show up as the subject matter expert. The way you handled this situation, left that person feeling whole and it was great. The next time you prepare for this meeting, why don't you try researching this one thing? I think that'll have the outcome be more productive for you.
Yeah.
Then you go back to all of a sudden that redirecting feedback is not a threat.
Yeah.
Because you've established that you're in their corner.
Yeah.
And it's also the key thing with feedback is, one, they have to experience and trust that you're in their corner.
Yeah.
And that's the other role that positive reinforcing feedback plays. So intent is so critical, but also that the feedback is given in a way that tells them how it will positively impact the outcome they want.
Yeah.
So if they want to be perceived as an expert the next time they present to an executive team, that's when you say, if you did this one thing, like maybe if you try to mock, next time let's do a mock practice.
Yeah.
And I think that'll have you feel more confident. So you show up as the subject matter expert I know you are when we meet with the executives.
Yeah.
That's like, I'm in your corner.
Yeah.
Here's the action to take, and here's how it will impact the outcome you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all know, right? Practice will make you better. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's like that those are core ingredients to feedback are what is critical and important. It has to be actionable.
Yeah.
It has to be timely. It has to be specific. And you got to share how it's going to impact the outcome.
Yeah. So I think this is a really core, right, of developing your leadership skills. What's another one that's really important?
The other one is, I would say, recognition is really important. And again, because it's triggering that reward response in the brain, but particularly when a lot of us are leading hybrid or remote teams, what happens is employees can feel a bit isolated at home. Yeah. And like their manager doesn't have full visibility to everything on their plate and what they're working on. Yeah. And that's why recognition is really important. And one of the tips that I have is that when, let's say you and I were having a status and we're doing it via Zoom, right? Because we're working virtually. One of the questions that you can start off the status with is saying, what is it you would like to be acknowledged for? So first of all, you're starting off a meeting on like a great step, right? Because it's like, oh, let me think about how I rocked it today. And it's the opportunity for the employee to express those things that they may not think that their leader is aware of, that they're working on, or that they did a good job on. And so starting with self-recognition, because then that also sets up the leader to say, that was exceptional. I noticed that, or I didn't know you did that. Thank you for sharing that with me. Yeah. Sets the leader up to then follow that self-recognition with manager to employee recognition. So if managers did nothing else but incorporate that practice, I promise employees would feel twice as recognized as they do today. So that's the other powerful tool, because it has people feel seen and feel known and feel heard. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we want as humans? Yeah,
we all wanted you to do great, right? Yeah, no, I really like it, because that also shows, asking that question, it just shows what that person or employee, what they're proud of, right? Yes. And where their passion is, good and bad, right? Because you could have a tough project and you're like, oh, right. But still it is saying, this is what I'm proud of, because we went from A to B. And it's back to that problem solving of being good of being good at that. So that's really good. I want to jump into a little bit, because you have a lot of marketing experience that I mentioned in the beginning. So how how is marketing? Because sometimes marketing can be like out of its own little silo, right? And people are like, why do we have them? No, let's bring them back in here. So how do you break down the silos, or how do you connect the marketing team with the rest of the organization?
Yeah, and I think as I mentioned earlier, part of it is starting with, in the very development of the brand, you need to have the other parts of the organization involved.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing, and I've spoken to a couple of marketing groups about this. The reality is marketing cannot be effective if HR and operations can't fulfill on the grand promises being made in our brands. There's so many internal quote unquote campaigns that fall flat. And there's always the talk in marketing of the employee ambassador and the potential ROI of that. But that's never going to happen if the brand is not the lived experience of the employee, or if the employee is not actually recognized, rewarded, and empowered to deliver on those brand promises. So part of it is helping marketing realize, like, you can't be successful without those two. Like, your brand experience is never going to happen, not really, unless those two perspectives are at the table, so that you're all kind of swimming in concert, or rowing in concert, I guess, better than swimming. But so that's the first part. And I'll say to marketers, do you know what the employee sentiment is of your brand? Because they'll know what the consumer sentiment is of their brand, or the market sentiment, but do they know what the employee sentiment is? And then do they know do the employees experience the brand? I'll ask the marketing team, do you know what your employee engagement scores are, and where there's weakness in your brand experience, in their lived work experience? And most of the time marketers can't answer that question. And I go, that's why you don't have employee ambassadors who are advocating for your brand. On the flip side, I also challenge the HR leaders that they cannot be successful without marketing.
Okay.
And part of that is that HR will measure a lot of things, but I question sometimes employee engagement if they're not doing it inside of the brand promises, because the brand promises sort of define the company and what the company's promising out to the broader world. And if we're not asking employees, like, is that your lived experience, there's a disconnect there. And so then HR may not be taking actions on the things that are most relevant as compared to the brand experience and the brand promises. And then there's been this great focus, which I love, in HR on employee experience. The problem is it's usually not connected to customer experience work. And it's the employees who deliver on the customer experience. So again, I say to HR, this employee experience work, in order for you to prove the ROI and the impact of it, you need to connect it to the customer experience, to customer retention, customer satisfaction, tie it all the way through. And that's something that I've seen HR functions struggle with, is to create that connection. And then the last part is, there's a lot about HR that is marketing. I mean, there is communicating with employees and getting them to take action. That is marketing. And there are skills there that the marketing team has that really should be leveraged internally. There are so many examples where companies are much more effective at attracting, engaging, and retaining their customers than they are their employees. And it's because they're not sharing the skill set there. And in fact, that's one of the things about the Awesome People Leader program, is I took all of these HR best practices and all the things that we wish all of our line leaders knew and understood. There's rich content and knowledge to be shared there. But the difference is we package it up, we simplify it, and we make it easy for managers to then take action on it. It's not an HR white paper. It's a marketing collateral piece that says, no, here's how you go act on it. And by simply doing that, it makes it so much more digestible and impactful. And now those are some of the things that, HR leaders aren't trained. They don't build those muscles in. So they need marketing to bring that expertise to improve the effectiveness of the exceptional knowledge, skills, and excellence that does exist within HR.
No, that makes sense, right? And again, it's a one team right? It's never just one person. I think it's always, you have to look at it's one team, and you need to make, the bridge between the different departments makes you even stronger.
Yeah.
What about the because the world is changing right now. We're going up to 2 years where we have, it's a new way of working. I think there's never going back. That's not happening. It is a new way of how everything is. What have you seen right now with, with your clients or within your network? What has been changing because we are remote? And is it the whole, what do you offer, right? Because it is tough right now to hire new team members in, and it's tough, right? And the expectation of what they're looking for or what they want, or also on the other side, what is the employer looking for?
Right.
So what's the challenge right now? What do you see in your crystal?
Yeah. So one thing that I see right now is I do see employers slow to embrace how things have changed already.
Yeah.
And if these same companies were so slow to embrace what was happening on the consumer side, the leadership would be looked at like, you're not on it,
Yeah.
you need to be, and so it's super interesting to me to watch leaders and companies expect to be so responsive to consumers and customers and not bring that same responsiveness to what's changed in the talent market.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is I see a slow to change. And ways that shows up is one thing that I just did a couple weeks ago is look at job postings.
Yeah.
Job postings today are no different than they were 2, 3, 4, or 5 years ago. And they're really, it's like going on a first date and someone just talks about themselves and this is what I want and this is what I need and me. No one would go on another date with that person.
Yes, like you sit by the table in the corner. No.
Exactly. You're like, what am I here for? You don't need me.
No.
And job postings have been that way forever.
Yeah.
Even in this market where so many companies are like, it's so hard to find people, look at their job postings and they are that first date person talking about themselves and what they want and what they need.
I love this. Yeah.
And there is nothing in there for, this is why you might want to date me.
Yeah. I can make you a better leader. I can make you, this is an interesting field, right? We are this kind of company. Yeah.
And then the second thing is, I think part of why that hasn't changed is I don't think a lot of companies or leaders actually know what makes them distinctive as a place to work. And I see leaders posting on LinkedIn going, hey, join us. We have a great team, great culture. And I know we're on podcasts, so we can't see me do the little finger quotes around great, but what does that mean? Show me, don't tell me.
Yeah.
And I think they struggle, one, because they haven't defined those values in terms of behaviors.
Yeah.
But two, they also haven't paused and said, okay, we need to make sure we really understand our employees and our talent that we need to drive our business strategy.
Yeah.
And if we pause and do that, then we can understand what's really important to them and what they need. And then we can look at what we're offering to better fit that. And a company I'm in love with that has done this is Bumble, the women's dating app.
Yeah.
So they know who their target customer is, right? It's women.
Yeah.
And they know if we need women to help think like our customers and develop solutions. So you go to their website and look at their benefits, because they have benefits nobody else has.
Oh, wow.
And they are so women-centric in their benefits. Now, by women-centric, everyone benefits from them. So it's family-centric, it's human-centric.
Yeah.
They are a company and they've come up with benefits I had never even seen or heard of any place else. And I promise you, the way they did that is they talk to their employees.
Listen, right? They
talk. And they listen. Yeah. But it doesn't, and people are going to go there and they're going to go, but I can't provide those same level of benefits, and that's okay. I talked to a CEO of a manufacturing company 200 employees. Okay, so this isn't some big plant or anything.
Yeah.
But I loved it because this CEO got curious. He's like, what tends to really stress out our employees? What tends to drive absenteeism? What is that?
Yeah.
And it turned out they talked to their employees and they found it was unexpected financial things that came up, because we're talking manufacturing employees.
Yeah.
That always tripped them up. And then sometimes they would have to take on second jobs, which means that also created additional stress, fatigue, absenteeism, etc.
Like whole spiral, right? Yeah.
Right. And so then they got further curious about what were some of those unexpected expenses. Well, some are medical, some were things like unexpected expenses that came up because of medical.
Yeah.
And also, unfortunately, like divorce, adoption, that sort of thing. So this CEO found a law firm and said, we're going to provide, like, not for long drawn out things, but like arbitration for divorce, for friendly divorce. And we're going to make that legal resource available to our 200 employees.
Yeah.
And then also was a financial planner. They paid to have a financial planner to help them pay off debts and help them save for that house that they want, because that house builds equity.
Yeah.
And the employees were ecstatic.
Yeah.
And so he solved a business problem by solving a human problem. And I'm going to tell you, like, for that manufacturing firm of 200 people, to have those two resources available was not something that like killed the bottom line of the,
No. No.
When you get curious about what is it that's important to your employees, what gets in their way, what would support them, that is how you can define yourself in a differentiated manner in this marketplace. And then you have something to talk about in your job postings, in your interviews, and then your employees become those advocates for you, because let's not forget, employee referrals really critical in terms of attracting talent. And so doing that gives you so much more to work with. And that's one of the things I want to see more companies do, is to really define their work experience based upon what's important to their employees and what they value.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You don't need the ping pong table anymore, right?
No.
That's not the
No, and in fact, in a lot of environments, they would be like, why'd you spend that money on that ping pong table? Because that financial planner would be a lot more helpful to me. Yeah.
So it has changed. Yeah, no, I really like your example here. That just gives so much more. And it also gives you, it's a win-win, I think, as well, because the example you have, the employees that will have used these services, right, will actually talk positive about it. And it's all about, in the world we're in, it's your network as well. You're checking out, if you're looking for a new job, you are checking with your network if anybody knows this company. So that's a really nice way.
And one thing I want to add to this thing too, that cannot be overlooked, because we can bring people in, but how are you going to keep them? And 75% of people leave a job because they're manager. And the number one impact on the engagement level of an employee is their relationship with their manager. But the other thing that companies need to do is they have to invest in people-centered leadership development. And I'm not talking the top 20% of the company. I'm talking about the people who touch the most people in your organization. Because if you have good people leaders who know how to grow and develop talent, develop a high-performing team, they develop the kind of teams people want to be a part of. And that creates a stickiness that goes a long way, and it goes a lot further than compensation does in a lot of companies.
It's your second family. Come on.
It is. And yet I see a lot of companies spending money hand over fist on attracting, and they're not spending anywhere near as much on retaining and their manager development.
No. So you have so much experience. So if you have to look at yourself like 20 years ago, what kind of advice would you give yourself now, like reflecting back and forward here?
A couple of things. So I was really a marketer by trade, and because I had a challenging work experience, I followed a boss who I adored, and to work I loved. I thought I was going to love, and in the work itself I did, but I followed them to a company that I didn't do my research on.
Yeah.
And I own that, but it was a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And had I not had that experience, I wouldn't have been open to taking my marketing expertise and applying it in the area of talent.
Yeah.
And I love that I have this functional line leader experience, but now I have the benefit of the richness of knowledge that exists within human resources. So a couple of things I would tell myself is I've always sort of followed my career path is not a straight line. Like, then I was this, then I was that. It's taken a couple zigs and zags.
Yeah.
And it's gotten me to the exact place I am. And I'm so grateful for that. So I would validate myself 20 years ago to say, go ahead, follow those zigs and zags. Those are okay.
Yeah.
And then when I have those moments where the zig was not so fun, but that zig got me to where I am today, which I have benefit of knowing now, it's this idea of it'll all work out. Don't worry, this serves a purpose. And then last but not least, I've been lucky enough to have acquired this great experience leading teams and these knowledge leading teams, but I didn't have that at the start. And there's a lot of lessons I learned along the way, like most leaders do, through trial and error.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes I mess some things up early on. And the one thing is, I wish I would have had the benefit of that knowledge so that, I maybe would have messed things up a little bit less in my earlier days of leading people.
Yeah.
And, and I had to have those learnings too, to understand what people are grappling with today. Yeah. So it all serves a purpose.
Yeah.
But I would say, go ahead, zigzag. Even when it's not okay, it's going to be okay. And know that you're learning the lessons you need to know.
Definitely. And there's so much in the learnings, even though if it's a little cloudy day, it will be bright again. But no, that's really good advice. So if anybody, listening, right, they want to reach out to you, how can they find you? How can they actually connect to you?
Yeah. Well, HeatherP Solutions is my company from a consulting perspective. So HeatherPSolutions.com. You've heard me mention my manager development program, Awesome People Leaders, and that I can't believe the URL was available, but it was.
Good for you.
I would love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn too. I'm on there very regularly, and let's start a conversation. I love talking with people and learning what they're dealing with, hearing their perspectives, because it all fuels the work. So I would love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn too.
Awesome. And I'll make sure, the links, what you mentioned, I'll put that in the show notes, and I will also put it on the website, themindinnovation.com. So check it out right there. So Heather, thank you so much. This was just great. I think, a lot of the questions you're saying, what you should ask your team, it's just, I'm reflecting on it. So that's something I'm bringing back to my team.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me today.
If you enjoy this podcast, maybe you'd like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure also to check out our website, mindtheinnovation.com. And remember, stay curious and keep learning.